I have a cold and my throat hurts, but there's so much to say about Spider-Man PS4 right now. Hey, Chris Baker here, and I hope you've been keeping tabs on GameInformer.com and the Game Informer magazine, whether it's through paper or digital. There's been a lot going on with Spider-Man PS4 over the past couple days. I'm not going to recap everything. You have eyes, you can read it yourself. But there's been a decent amount of footage released, and I think it warrants some really close examination in terms of Easter eggs and other fun things. But before all that, it's time for a humble brag.
I've been saying the past, month or so, they could surprise us as early as late March, but I think it's probably going to be closer to fall. September is my guess.
Nailed it! In case you haven't heard, Spider-Man on PS4 will be out on September 7th. Mark your calendars. Anyway, some of the new footage that's come out over the past few days suggests that some of the things that I thought in my last video are actually not true, though I still do believe that they were pretty good guesses. Let's make some more. First of all, there's a brand new screenshot that shows a clear shot of the Daily Bugle. And of course, based on some of the teaser footage for the article, I said this. It appears that we're actually swinging right by the Daily Bugle building in this universe. I still contend that that looks like a label for a building and not a billboard. It's just really oddly placed for a billboard. Maybe it's the side of the Daily Bugle, or maybe it's another location of the Daily Bugle. Or maybe it's just a billboard. Based on that footage and the location of the Daily Bugle in the comics, I also sort of guessed that we were around 2nd and 39th in New York. I don't think that's the case anymore. Huge shout out to RVC1510 in my comments section, who said this looks like Union Square Park and the church looks like Grace Church on Broadway. I tend to agree, especially now that we have a few more seconds of footage than we had before, which includes a statue where George Washington's statue is in the actual Union Square Park. RVC1510, I think you nailed it. Funny enough, while I was going down the route that I thought Spider-Man was taking, a Justice League billboard popped up, and I noted that you probably would not be seeing that in the game. You won't, but guess what the very first thing you see is in the very first shot of the latest Game Informer footage. That's right, it's promotional material for the Trust Us League movie. You get a little bit better of a shot of it a little later on. They even use a similar logo. Of course, the next thing that happens here is Spidey goes straight into Times Square, which is an awesome place to see Easter eggs and just other creative things. And I think in some cases there was actual thought put into these fake movies and Broadway shows, so let's take a look at some of these. Actually, first let's take a look at what's happening as a whole here. Check out the fire. This is definitely a key moment in the story, I would say. Something has happened and Spider-Man is following this trail of fire that you can see that goes on into the distance. Can't wait to see who's causing that fire. The broken hot dog cart to the left kind of speaks to this commotion as well, and behind it we actually see that we're at 1515 Broadway, which is a pretty famous address in real life. It's the headquarters of Viacom, which is where of course they have MTV and Comedy Central, VH1, Nickelodeon, a bunch of big cable channels and such originate in the Viacom building. And right next to that in real life is where they have The Lion King on Broadway. So this particular play that we have here is kind of along that same line. The animal-themed Wolf and Sheep seems to have won a Toonie Award, which is kind of a Mad Magazine version of a Tony Award, I guess. And if you look a little closer, I believe it says Christopher Kimball's Wolf and Sheep. Maybe there's somebody who's working on the game who has that name, but when I googled it, I just saw that it's the name of a very famous chef. And maybe I'm digging too much here, but there's a very famous story called Peter and the Wolf. Peter is Spider-Man. Maybe that had something to do with the name of this play. Probably not, but it's fun to think so. Times Square does appear to be a little smaller in this game than it is in real life, but there's still quite a bit here. To the right, there's a kiosk that's just too hard to make out. Then Spidey takes a mighty leap and we see a lot more. In real life, the Mizu building there is actually a Marriott hotel, but there is actually a Mizu in New York. It's a sushi place. Views from the Veranda is a pretty believable name for a pretentious Broadway play. Reign of Dasher sounds like an awesomely psychotic sequel to Prancer, and I get a real Pretty Woman vibe from that Kate and Kevin poster. And we may not have that Marriott hotel, but the way it kind of juts out in a circular manner is pretty similar to the big hour sign, which I just don't get. If you look below that though, you see Calexco, which you might remember popping up a couple of times in the E3 2017 gameplay trailer. To the right is that better look at the Trust Us League, another views from the veranda, and something called Shimmer. But take a look above that. Could this billboard possibly be related to the Get Into the Black billboard that we saw very early on that may or may not be Mary Jane? In the middle we have something that resembles the TKTS booth where you buy cheap Broadway tickets, and some more ads above that feel like they fit right in. As Spider-Man moves along, we see that you press R2 to swing and an objective comes up, clearing the way, get to Fisk Tower. It makes sense that this is an early mission in the game, not only based on what we already know about the story, that taking down the Kingpin is one of the first things you do, but it's also just an impressive set piece, and it puts you in the mindset that, hey, I'm playing an awesome AAA game right here. Almost as awesome as The Woods of London and Frosted Halos Donuts. Anyone else reminded of the movie Next, starring Nicolas Cage for The Man with the Dark Past? I mean, I could totally see Nicolas Cage starring in a movie called The Man with the Dark Past. From here on out, it's mostly stuff we've already seen. Eventually you make it to the Thompson building, with a font that reminds me of Nathan's Hot Dogs. And I'm forced to wonder if it has any relation to Flash Thompson. Maybe his dad owns a business or something. We also see the most expensive looking re-elect Osborn sign that we've seen yet. And if we back up the tape just a little bit, you can see it says Osborn, a better New York. Perhaps this is the Oscorp building, or maybe just his campaign headquarters? I think it makes sense. You know what also makes sense? Wrapping this thing up. I am freaking sick. I'm sure there's lots more to come, guys. I'll talk to you later. You know the drill. Follow Spider-Ham's advice. See you next time.